Hello, Warbirders! So after I got a few more requests for airplanes that I've already covered, I did a detailed episode-by-episode comparison of what should be available online and what actually is available online. So I was kind of shocked to see that there were many episodes missing, including the A6M0, B-25 Mitchell, 2 episodes on the Lancaster, one on her sister British bomber, the Handley Page Halifax, the Messerschmitt Bf-109, an episode on Russia's early Yak fighters, the long-term airplane versus balloon grudge match feud, a look at the float-equipped F-4F known as the Wildcat Fish, and a few others, including today's subject, the Aichi D3A Val. So expect to see all of those re-released moving forward. Unlike the other re-releases up until now, I didn't even have the original recorded file on this one. The bad news is that I would have to re-record. The good news is it gives me a chance to tinker and fix a few things that have been bugging me about this episode. Okay, enough preamble. The Val is a dive bomber, so let's really dive in. Cue the music. Hello and welcome to World of Warbirds. I'm Brian Pierce. Please sign up at my Patreon to get episodes earlier, bonuses, to have a say on future content, and to interact with me and other Warbirders directly. But mainly you'll have the satisfaction of helping keep this podcast going. You can also toss me a tip via PayPal at WOWB17, or even just drop me a review. Thank you for your support. Now on to the show. Okay, be honest. If I had asked you to name famous dive bombers of World War II, would you have named the Val? Maybe. For sure you would have named the Ju-87 Stuka. I mean, that's the definitive dive bomber. If pressed, you probably would have come up with the Douglas SBD and maybe the Curtiss Helldiver. But I think we can agree that the Aichi D3A just doesn't get the same kind of attention, and that's weird. Why is it weird? Well, especially for our friends in the USA, the Val played a major role on the 7th of December 1941, when forces of the Imperial Japanese Navy hit Pearl Harbour. Fully a third, that's 126 of the Japanese aircraft involved in that battle were D3As. And the Val served the entire war, even being used for kamikaze attacks right at the end. So she really does deserve some attention. So let's give Val that attention right now. The Aichi company actually started way back in 1898 as a maker of watches and clocks in Nagoya. In 1920, they began building airplanes and later on developed a partnership with Heinkel Flugzeugwerke, and it was from this relationship that we saw the origins of the Val. In the early 1930s, the Imperial Japanese Navy was seeking an advanced carrier-based dive bomber, and as such, in 1931, Aichi asked Heinkel to design such an aircraft. The result was the Heinkel HE-50, which was a fixed-gear biplane with a fuselage made of fabric-covered welded steel tubes, except for the nose, which was metal, and the wings were of fabric-covered wood. I'll post a picture over on the Patreon page so you can see what I'm talking about. This aircraft was crewed by a pilot and a rear gunner. Aichi took this design and built the D3A, which the Allies called Suzy. The Suzy was armed with 3 7.7mm machine guns, 2 fixed forward firing, and 1 flexibly mounted in the rear. It carried 2 66-pound bombs, which were slung under the wings, and 1 551-pound bomb, which was on a swing-down mounting to avoid hitting the prop in a dive. They gradually improved the Suzy by adding aerodynamic features such as spats on the wheels, a NACA cowling, and a streamlined windshield. Horsepower maxed out with the use of a 730 horsepower Nakajima Hikari 9-cylinder air-cooled radial engine. Almost 600 were built, and it was used on the carriers Akagi, Kaga, and Ryuju, and also from land bases during the Second Sino-Japanese War from 1937 onwards. By 1941, they had all been relegated to second-line service and training. By 1936, the Imperial Japanese Navy was already planning to replace Suzy, issuing the 11 Shi specification, which was looking for a carrier-based monoplane dive bomber. Aichi, Nakajima, and Mitsubishi all put their hands up, and both Aichi and Nakajima were asked to build 2 prototypes each. Again, Aichi looked to Germany for inspiration and built prototypes around low-mounted elliptical-shaped wings that were very similar to the Heinkel HE-70 Blitz, which would later be developed into the venerable HE-111. I've got an episode on that one, and I'll put a link in the show notes. Power was to be provided by the same Nakajima Hikari 1 9-cylinder radial engine as the Suzy, and to keep things simple, the gear was also designed to remain fixed. The first prototype D3A1 was ready in December 1937, and it began flight testing in January. Results were disappointing. Perhaps they should have foreseen that the engine would just not be enough for the new all-metal construction. And indeed, the aircraft was underpowered. The D3A1 was also unstable in turns, especially in a tight turn where the aircraft tended to surprise the pilot with a snap roll. For an aircraft designed to be a stable platform to drop bombs while diving, there was way too much vibration coming from the dive brakes when they were extended at the desired speed of 200 knots. What was worse was that the Navy was already requesting a greater diving speed of 240 knots. Things were not looking good for the D3A. But remember, Aichi was authorized to build 2 prototypes, and so they used the second one to iron out the kinks. The dive brakes were beefed up. The tail fin was enlarged to increase directional stability. The wings were enlarged, and washout was increased at the wingtips to reduce the annoying snap rolls. Now, the first time I recorded this episode, I didn't explain the aeronautical term washout, and after my first Q&A episode, I had decided to explain things in more detail moving forward. And this re-release gives me the chance to fix this. So, in aeronautics, washout refers to a gradual decrease in the angle of incidence. This means the angle at which the wing is bolted to the fuselage from the wing root to the wing tip. This design feature is intentionally built into the wing structure to improve flight stability and stall characteristics. By having a high angle of incidence at the wing root, this ensures that the wing root stalls before the tips during a high angle of attack condition, such as during takeoff or landing. The tips are where the ailerons are located, and so control is maintained even as less critical parts of the wing begin to stall, enhancing pilot control and safety. So they adjusted the wing washout and they added more power via the 839 horsepower Mitsubishi Kinsei 3. Although the directional stability was still not what it could be, the fixes were enough to win over the Navy, and in December 1939, the Imperial Japanese Navy, or IJN, ordered what it would call the Type 99 Carrier Bomber Model 11. During the course of production, some tinkering continued to improve the aircraft. A dorsal fin strake was added halfway down the rear fuselage in order to solve that pesky directional stability issue. And even more power was supplied by installing either a Kinsei 43 or Kinsei 44 engine generating 1,000 and 1,070 horsepower respectively. Total production of the type was almost 1,500 examples. Just as with her older sister, the Suzy, the Val was armed with two fixed forward-firing 7.7mm machine guns, and one flexible 7.7mm gun in the back, which was operated by an observer. The Val carried a single 550-pound bomb under the fuselage, which was swung out under the propeller arc by a trapeze. The Val also had wing racks located outboard of the dive brakes on which could be carried two 130-pound bombs. To help aim the bombs, the pilot used a telescopic sight. The observer, who also acted as a navigator, was equipped with a drift sight in the floor. Again, the first time around, I just blurted out drift sight without ever explaining what the heck it was, as if you all have one mounted on your cars or bikes. So, a drift sight is a navigational instrument used in aerial navigation to measure the angle of drift, how far an aircraft is being blown off course by the wind. It typically consists of a small optical device mounted in the aircraft floor, allowing for the navigator to look directly down at the ground. By observing and tracking the movement of terrain features across a grid or reticle within the site, the navigator can determine the angle between the aircraft's heading and its actual ground track. This drift angle, combined with airspeed and heading data, allows the navigator to calculate wind speed and direction, as well as correct the course to stay on the intended flight path. So, very important for long, over-ocean navigation. The navigator was a busy guy, not only acting as a navigator and gunner, but also as the radio man, using the Type 96 Mark II radio that was installed between the pilot and the observer's station. Although officially a carrier aircraft, the Val began its combat career in November 1939 from land bases in China. In 1940, Vals and their pilots began their transition training aboard the aircraft carriers Akagi and Kaga. As stated at the very beginning, 126 Vals were involved in the attack on Pearl Harbor, all of them carrying one 551-pound general-purpose bomb each. They played a crucial role, delivering precise dive-bombing strikes against U.S. Navy battleships and airfields. These aircraft were responsible for inflicting significant topside damage on several capital ships, including the USS Arizona, USS Oklahoma, USS West Virginia, and USS California. While torpedo bombers handed out much of the underwater damage, the Vals effectively targeted ships' guns, gun emplacements, and superstructures, contributing to the overall devastation. They also attacked airfields such as Hickam, Wheeler, and Bellows fields, destroying hangars and dozens of aircraft on the ground, which crippled the American ability to respond defensively. One of their most devastating effects was the hit on the USS Arizona, where a bomb penetrated the forward magazine, resulting in a massive explosion and over 1,100 deaths. Despite the heavy damage they inflicted, Japanese losses amongst D3A units were relatively light, with only 15 lost, thanks in part to the surprising nature of the attack and limited opposition early on. The Val's success at Pearl Harbor demonstrated the deadly effectiveness of carrier-based dive bombers in the modern naval warfare of World War II. For the next year, Vals were employed everywhere the IJN fought, often going up against shipping with teamwork from Kate torpedo bombers and Zero fighters. With experimentation, it was found that a mix of armored piercing bombs and land fragmentation bombs was best, with the fragmentation explosions helping to suppress the AA fire. The basic procedure was to cruise into battle at about 10,000 feet, dipping the wings once in a while to see the enemy. Once an enemy ship was identified, the formation would turn to attack from the stern, which would increase the chances of a hit. As the target was passed, the pilot would chop the throttle, engage the dive brakes, and roll the plane over. The steeper the diving angle, the higher the bombing accuracy. So a 80 to 90 degree dive was best. The Val was known to be very stable due to the dive brakes and fixed gear. So it was possible to get a good aim through the bomb sight. Aiming was through aileron and elevator inputs, and the bombs would be released at about 1,500 feet. After the bomb release, the dive brakes would be retracted and the stick hauled back to pull out of the dive. To get away, it was best to jinx to throw off the aim of the AA gunners. During the first year of the war, Vals rampaged all over the Pacific, supposedly sinking more Allied shipping than any other Axis aircraft. Although I do not have solid proof on this. I do know that Vals either sank or helped to sink many ships, including oilers, cargo ships, a bunch of destroyers, the British heavy cruisers HMS Cornwall and HMS Dorsetshire, and the U.S. aircraft carriers Lexington, Yorktown, and Hornet, and the British carrier HMS Hermes. They also damaged the Big E, USS Enterprise. It was a cruel fact that many of the aircraft that were on top during the start of World War II did not stay there very long, and this was true of the Val. Way back in 1940, development had started on a replacement for the Val, which was the Yokosuka D3A Judy dive bomber. Teething problems with the Judy caused the Val to have to continue to serve well beyond her capabilities. For example, 27 Vals flew into the Battle of the Marianas, where every single one was shot down, in what became known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, with the Vals playing the part of at least some of the turkeys. They even failed to score even one hit that day. Once the Yokosuka D3A Judy dive bombers were able to take their place on the front line, the Vals were moved back to second line and land-based roles. Their very last service was literally suicidal, as some of them were used for the mounts of kamikaze pilots. As far as I can tell, there's only one Val being restored to flying condition, and that is the example at the Planes of Fame Museum in Chino, California. Thank you to everybody who helps to support the podcast, either by liking and subscribing or dropping me a tip via PayPal. That's at World of Warbirds B17. And especially those who have joined to support me over at Patreon. Remember, I take those guys' suggestions first because, well, hey, they're my ground crew. So why don't you come over and join us? Until next time.